like to welcome everybody to the May 13th Water and Sewer Commission meeting, 6 o'clock, here at the Town Hall in the cafeteria room. On our agenda, we'd like to open right up, and we have to reorganize because there was an election, and I'm going to ask for any nominations for officers and a chairman and a clerk.
I nominate Luke as our chairman again.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to nominate Steve for clerk position.
I'd like to second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we have myself as chairman and Mr. Bishop as clerk. I'd like to look at the bid results from the West Main Street Sewer Project. We have had a bid opening, and we have had 3 bids come in. The prices for said bids are significantly higher than our engineered estimates, but as these are actual bids, these will be the numbers that we will have to proceed. And I just want to kick these numbers around. We have Roccio at roughly 4.2 million. That's the low bidder. The next bidder was Rivoli, and they're at 4.36 million. And then the high bidder was Baltazar at roughly 4.5 million. So you have, in my opinion, a relatively tight spread from 4.2 to 4.5 million. So the 3 bidders were obviously looking at the same specs and same plans. So we don't have a huge skew group of bids. So although the numbers are higher, I think they're probably rather accurate with our test borings and whatnot. I think we had borings done every 300 feet along the course of the project. And we talked sometime about the boulders, rough material down deep, where we are a little bit deep. That's going to slow them down and will increase costs a little bit. The thing we need to look at is how we're going to come up with the shortfall in funds from our projected total prior to this was some 5.2 million, if I'm not mistaken.
4.2.
Well, with the other, that was the total. The total was 4.2. Okay, so and then on top of this, we have approximately 1.5 million in various other costs. So we're somewhat short, approximately 1.5 million short. I think we need to just look at how we're going to allocate those funds.
Want to go right to it, and what the options are?
Sure.
Obviously, we're disappointed, but it is a tough job. Mike mentioned that the other day, Saturday, the MFN ribbon cutting. It is a tough job. A lot of the state highway, even the work at Wheaton College, we're basically paving a new road for them, just like we did with the phase 1 going the other way. State highway paving costs are significant. And we need to put down 8 inches of pavement in the trench, there's a 9. And we just have an overlay for the parts that we've got a lot of crossings going across the street. So it's extremely expensive. Right now, we're still talking about working at night because the state highway requirements for time on the job start, you can get on the street at 9, and you gotta be off the street by 3. And talking to Joe Baeta, he wanted us off by 2, or the contractor off by 2.
Yeah, that was day work, right?
Right.
Yep.
So because of that, you start to get down to the point where you got 5 hours total, half an hour to open it up, half an hour to close it. Now you got 4 hours of real production, and the job would take a long time. And as you guys know, time is money. You got a contractor, they gotta pay for the guys for 8 hours. It's gonna cost a lot of money, and it's gonna take a long time. At night, we'll have more hours hours to work. Obviously, a little bit less production than if it was during the day and no traffic, but obviously the beauty of working at night is no traffic, or comparatively no traffic. And just so you know, that the $5.7 million total now, the original appropriation was actually pre-designed. So the very original job actually included design costs, and this other cost includes not only engineering during construction, we have construction contingencies that are required to be carried by the SRF. We have police and fire as far as traffic control, and we got some other miscellaneous costs as far as some tie-ins that are all part of that. And they got the $1.7 million cost. So I'm not sure if you want to talk about what we talked to the selectmen about a year ago and some options. I don't know if you want to go there or what you would really want, how you want to handle it from here.
I was expecting any of the select board tonight? No. Okay.
Do you want to just go to that? This?
Do you want to go through this?
Is that what you want to do, Lou?
I wasn't here last year, so I'd like to see.
So what Steve handed out, is handing out is that we had actually, before town meeting, the last time, we went for monies, we talked to the select board about how to pay for this project. And because it's not as simple as you might think. And there are some moving parts here. And obviously the dollar amounts that are needed are significantly higher than they were a year ago. And maybe the best thing to do is go right from the top. And that's the $5.7 million total project cost. The DHCD commitment for 1.376, that's basically the grant that they have for the project. So we're using the entire amount out of the grant that they have because they're funded by the state. Inclusive of that as well is their connection fee, which is $235,000. So for a grand total of almost $1.4 million coming from DHCD. Subtotal $4.3 million. The school's contribution, you can see from the footnote, the DHCD, maybe you don't see it here, but the DHCD number, I've ingrained this number to my skull. It was 27.7%. They actually paid their people to spend weeks and weeks coming up with that percentage based on flow. And the percentage based on flow for the schools is about almost 25%. So that number ends up being 1.4. Now let me clarify one thing. That DHCD commit was based on the lower construction cost. It's not based on the current construction cost, because that's the amount of the grant. So it's not a straight percentage. It started out as 27.7%, but it's based on the amount of money that they actually have from the
What
state.
about the school contribution? Is that based on the higher percentage?
No,
So-
no, for the schools it is,
Yes.
for
so
DHCD it's not.
So is that gonna be a bigger number than 1.4?
No, there's
It's
gonna-
based on the, okay, it's current.
Right. So, again, make another deduction, what's left, as far as sources of revenue, betterments, we feel strongly that a $15,000 per dwelling unit assessment is appropriate to take you a trip down memory lane that none of us were out for. Mike wasn't here, we weren't here when Winnicott was done. The cost was $11,550 per house, for a residential unit. That was approximately 12 years ago. And roughly increasing the cost maybe about 1% per year. We arrived at the $15,000 per unit. I think it's fair, looking at other communities. It's not high and it's not low. And it's kind of in the middle. And if you look at the valuation of properties that are being served here as compared to Winnicott, the general valuation is higher. So as a percentage of the value of the property, I think that the $15,000 per unit is really appropriate. Now, one of the things that you've got the benefit of doing here, that you didn't have back in 12 years ago when Winnicott was done. State law basically said you got two choices to charge interest on those betterments. And it was either 2% more than what you're paying on the bonds, and back then your town did get a 2% loan. So it was either 4% or a straight 5%. You had two choices, two numbers, and that's it. Now the laws have changed. You have up to 2% more on top of what you're borrowing. So you can set an interest rate that's lower. So, in talking previously with the commission, I felt that instead of, you know, a 4% interest rate, you can charge 2.5% or 2% if you so chose. This generation of numbers comes out based on 2.5%, and what the cost would end up being. So a 15,000 betterment, paid over 20 years, and 2.5% interest. Now, remember too that betterments are payable whether you tie in or not. And the town's charter, I believe, Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, on the charter or the vote that was taken 4 or 5 years ago maybe, people don't, they've got 5 years to tie in, even on a town project. So the people thinking they have to tie in right away and start paying the cost of contractor to make the tie-in and pay the user charges, that's not the case. They have 5 years to tie in. So essentially, they've got for the single-family homes, they got a $15,000 insurance policy that they can pay over 20 years at 2.5%. And I dare say that if their septic system fails, Luke, you're in the business, I'm not sure how many septic systems you can build for $15,000 these days.
Right.
So, it's a crazy way of looking at things, but, you know, when you start figuring out what a fair betterment should be, or high or low, you're basically in a position where you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. And so if the people are getting served versus the people not getting served, you know, if they're equally upset, you've done your job, which is pretty bad to say because now you got two folks that are, both sides that are actually upset about it. But I think based on what we've seen in the sewer communities, if you will, Massachusetts, 50,000 is a real number. So if we take those costs out, we're left with 1.3 million that needs to be financed somehow. A year ago when we did this, we talked about using the differential from the APN. And for those who don't know what that is, it's the annual payments to Norton that comes from the MFN. Mike and others were involved in negotiating. Back how many years ago, Mike? 5, 6?
2014.
Yeah. So what has happened is the base cost per year started, I believe, 3 years ago at 200,000, and that now ramps up with $10,000 per year. So this current year we're in now, it's 230,000 comes the town's way. 2020 it'll be 240,000. So the talk was back a year ago that you would potentially, the selectmen voted to potentially use a portion of that to pay the differential for this project just to get it filled. Well, obviously that doesn't really do the job anymore based on the differential and the need for about $82,000 per year. So we're kind of like looking to the town for a little bit of guidance and decision making on, first of all, if you want to do the project, and second of all, how you want to finance it for the remainder here, or even question the other allocations that we've generated. You could again look at the base cost or the added cost above the base for the APN. Well, next year would probably be the first year, maybe even the year after that would be 40 or 50 grand that would be available potentially for this out of the 82. So it would still leave 30 to 40,000 left to finance per year. And I mean, you can just say, okay, tax rate, you can say maybe, because of the way the indirect costs are calculated, these project costs would actually increase that a little bit too, percentage of spending, how they're calculated, so maybe part of that is an option. And I can't guarantee this, but I did have a discussion today with folks at DHCD, told them what was going on, told them the prices were coming high, and told them that, it would be a shame if this project couldn't go through, because if the costs are going up for us, the cost for them to build a treatment plant would be going up just as high. So the concern, I've expressed the concern to him. He's going to look into, what their options might be as far as potentially funding more monies.
So if they were willing to pay 27.7% of the previous estimate, if they did that with this, it would be an additional 430.
415,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Well, I got 437,900.
It's okay, close enough for government work.
Yep.
So yeah, so we, in fact, I did talk to him about that, the dollar amount, and that would translate, you know, with interest payments at about $28,000 more a year. Well, call it what you want, call it a surcharge on the user charge, call it a capital fee, call it what you want. But I floated that by him today, to say, you know, you pony, you know, your fair share of this project in order to make it work, because I think if in fact it does not get funded, I think they're in trouble. They're in
Well,
trouble.
back from the driving point of this whole project was the Mass DHCD. So it was their treatment plant, a septic system, on-site septic system that needs the attention. And,
Just one other question.
go ahead.
The 82,300 you have there,
Mhm.
does that include the 30,000 from the APN or not?
We have not, we haven't touched that yet. So if the 30 from the APN, or 40 would be in year one, this would be $42,000 in year one more that would be needed.
And then with the Mass State DHCD driving the project, in conjunction with our schools that weren't hitting the nitrogen levels out at the middle school, because not only the middle school is using that plant, the high school and the Yale school are doing it, so those two schools would be put on this, so it's really at least a double prong need. And then the third spoke in the wheel is the businesses and residents along the way who, I know we have a Cumberland Farms project that's imminent, and that those folks I'm sure want to tie in and contribute to the tax base as that sort of building would. So it's a benefit for the whole area. We just have to figure out how to get these tens of thousands of dollars of difference out of the way so we can move ahead.
Yeah, and as I said, costs aren't going down, they continue to go up. It's just kind of the time we're in. At Saturday's meeting, I talked to folks from DEP. They said virtually every project that they're funding is going up. I talked to a gentleman who works for the city of Taunton. He told me about a water main job that they couldn't believe the prices that came in. So it's pretty much everywhere in the state. It's just that time that contractors are very, very busy. To only get 3 bidders, that kind of tells you something.
Right.
People have a lot of work.
Hey, Fran, is that a blue pen over there, or is that a black pen? Beside you.
Oh, it's blue, white.
I'd like to use it to sign bills. Bills are, all right, bills are a blue pen.
I thought it was leaking or something.
No.
I was like, oh my God. So yeah, this is not an easy decision by any means. It's just, it really is a local call on how best to do this, if to do it at all. You know, I'd like to think that maybe you could be optimistic about the state, but the challenge we had in dealing with them from the get-go about money it wasn't easy. It was not easy at all to come up with the dollars that are in play here. Those dollars kept dwindling, and then we got them back up a little bit. And I think the dollars that we're talking about here it is what it is, but you know, maybe there's an option here. And like Luke said that I think even on the cusp of the project being built, there's at least one project that could bring, I don't know, $60,000 a year tax revenue, depending on what the cost is for one piece of property. And that could be more than that, more properties along the way, once the sewer project is built, that serves everybody along the way. I wish this was an easier decision for you guys. It was hard for us to even look at the numbers and see how high these costs have been in, but they're real numbers. We're not looking at an estimate. These are real numbers with contingencies. The engineering that's already been done during design and permitting, the engineering that's to be done during construction, the police details, and there are significant dollar costs in here for police details, and potentially fire if needed, and other utility costs, or not crosses, but connections. They're all part of the project. Sorry, I missed something, Steve?
Can I just ask one more question?
As you want.
The DHCD number, in this letter, they had said 1,141,000.
Correct.
And has that increased to 1,376,000?
No, what we did is we, because they were paying for the share of construction, that's what the 1141 is. The 235,000, they're paying now for the capacity of the treatment plant that they're buying. So that's how the number, of 1376 comes in. Right.
So it's basically the full amount of their grant plus a calculated connection fee based on the commission's regs.
Exactly.
And as much as you could back it into that flow percentage number, in the end, they capped out, they were trying to come in under the grant amount, and finally, the agreement was they would go to the full amount of the grant. Because they couldn't be, so we talked about being subject to the percentage, because what they wanted the upside, they wanted to take out the upside risk, they wanted to cap it at the grant amount, but if the price came in lower, they would pay the 27% based on whatever it was, and we told them you can't have both. Either you're gonna pay the full amount of the grant, or you can have the percentage, and then whatever the cost comes in, and they said they can't. At that point, they didn't have more than what the grant was at the time. I don't know if you're gonna get any more out of them, but, you know, they're aware that the numbers came in high, and they need to discuss.
Yeah, and they're deeply concerned that the project's not gonna go, because trying to build a treatment plant on that site is not gonna be easy. The plant itself will be easy to build, putting it in the ground, not so easy, you know, based on the soil conditions they have there over the years and the failures they've had with the soil and high groundwater at that location. It will not be easy to do the hydrogeo work to prove they can actually get in the ground and keep it in the ground, that DEP will require them to do. And it's probably between permitting, testing, design, construction, they're probably looking at 2.5 years anyway, maybe more, to get that done if they have to start from scratch, to start designing a treatment plant. So my sense is they've always said they'd rather be tied in the sewer, because it is the best option for them, and it's the final option for them as well.
Well, it's also, like Dr. Byetta said about the schools, then they're out of the sewer business. It's painful in the beginning to pay, but then it's simply a fixed cost, and that's what it is, and there's no maintenance of a plant, no updating the plant, and
Yeah.
also they have a realization of real estate that they can decommission their septic system, and they have more area for units if that is in their future.
And it may very well be. And to remember this, that the game plan here is, once this project is built, if it is built, you are now set up to tie in the middle school to abandon the treatment plant, a pump station at the middle school site. The force main's already there. From there, all the way up to the pump station at the housing authority. It's all gonna be part of this project. So this pump station would need to be built, and if you remember correctly, beyond that, there's a force main that goes all the way to the Salmon East School. So a pump station at that school, you can basically say we can get rid of, or if the town wanted to, get rid of that septic system, put a pump station there, pump into the force main that exists there, and be done with it. So all the schools could be off a treatment plant. And right now, it's only the Yale High School and Middle School on that plan. Salmon East is on a septic system. So this is a bigger project than just what we're looking at. It's beyond this.
Absolutely. And we talked before, you know, the reason that we timed everything the way we did with the bid opening, we knew, you know, we could see the construction costs over the last year have just not stopped going up. You know, I've never seen costs go up at this rate. So it's almost impossible to project where they're gonna be and where they're gonna be a month from now or 2 months from now. So that's why we set this up this way, is instead of giving another estimate and going back to town meeting with another estimated cost, we said, let's bid it, let's find out what the numbers are. So this is a real number, you know, the bid number is a real number. And basically the bid number came in at exactly what the total dollar value that you have. You have 4.2 million, that's what the bids came in at. There are obviously a lot of other costs associated with the project, and those add up to 1.5 million. And those are still some projections in there, that's based on, you know, assumed production of the contractor, which affects the police detail costs, the engineering oversight, all those auxiliary costs that make up that 1.5, as well as a construction contingency. you're not in a position to award this contract. You don't have the contingencies in place and all the other monies. So that's why we're here tonight. I don't, how the process goes from here, that's, we had this whole discussion about how it might get done, but the hurdle ahead of, the first hurdle is getting the town meeting vote. So getting the support of town meeting, you need a 2/3 vote. In order to get that, that's what brings us back to tonight, I think, is talking with the board, basically the FinCom, and I thought also the select board, in terms of bringing them up to speed so that we're not having these discussions on the town meeting. I think the commission needs to know where the support is, what the thought is. We have hard copies of a PowerPoint that we could talk through with the FinCom. That's probably, instead of just diving right into the numbers, give them a little more, the same background we've given before, but, kind of explain. This project started with the commission had finished the town center project, which included the pump station at Wheaton. We knew the future plan was to come up West Main Street, but that was more like a 5+ year plan. And then right on the heels of that pump station going online, the Housing Authority came forward and said, we have to build a treatment plant. We have this money.
In conjunction
and
with
this is what we're gonna
the
do.
Wheaton pump station, remember, we hooked up, we were allowed this, the school on Plain Street, the
Yep.
LG North School.
The
to
LG
hook
North
up. So that's-
School,
That's school
we took
number
that,
one on the.
and that
on the
was
sewer.
a good
Much,
thing between,
much needed solution.
And a lot of the costs of that project were, we made a significant contribution to those costs to get rid of their treatment plant, so this was just another opportunity. So the Housing Authority came in and said, we'd rather use this money to tie into sewer than to build our own plant. The school stepped up, if you remember, the Housing Authority looked into tying into the treatment plant at the middle school, and they got turned down. DEP kicked it back and said, not only can the Housing Authority not connect, the schools are not meeting permits, and we need to do something here. So that's what started all this. It's all about, this is a good thing for the schools, they want to get rid of that. They definitely want to take the high school and the Yale school away from the middle school. That'll alleviate the immediate issues that they're having out there just by bringing less load, less flow, less load to the plant. But if we do this, if we get this project built, then we get the high school and the Yale school tied into the sewer that flows into tied into the new sewer system. They no longer need that force main that runs back to the middle school. The middle school can then turn around, as Fran was saying, and turn their treatment plant into a pump station, and all the infrastructure is already in the ground for them to just pump up and connect into the new sewer. So they could get rid of the treatment plant at the middle school. Not only do you not have to build the treatment plant at the Housing Authority, you can get rid of the plant at the middle school. And you can bring the Solomon East School in if that is a future design. My understanding is that system is not having problems right now, but it gives you the ability down the road. So that's why the commission stepped up and moved this thing forward. So, unfortunately, the prices have continued to escalate in the 2+ years that we've been looking into this and trying to get all of the agreements in order. We recently executed the agreement with the Housing Authority within the last month, right? And we're still trying to get a signed easement agreement.
Easements are closed.
We'll get it. So we're in a position to get all of that. The SRF loan that we have, for the pool of money that we're in, or the year of the loan that we're in, we have to start construction by the end of June of this year, or else we'll have to kick to the next round of funding. I mean, it's unlikely, whatever year we do it, we should be able to get the SRF funding, but we'll definitely miss out on the fund that we're in right now, which is a 2% loan plus additional subsidy. It adds up to, what do we say, about $175,000. What is that? It's a principal forgiveness based on the
It's affordability criteria.
right.
I'm not sure exactly what it was within this fiscal year when a project appeared on the priority list. All I can tell you is that it was a flexible number that varied a little bit. But starting in fiscal 19, DEP basically said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to set a number, and the number that if this project was funded in fiscal 19, it would be 3.3% of the total grant amount, or total loan amount, which turns out to be about $170,000+ principal forgiveness. That is not reflected in these numbers.
it's just less that you have to pay back on the SRF. In addition to the balance of the loan being a 2% loan, there's a little bit of principal forgiveness in the loan, which helps in the pay down of the overall thing. So, you know, that's the reality, and I just, we're trying to figure out how to get from here to the next step. So we're gonna go, you guys are gonna go before the FinCom, present the story to them, you know, and look for their support. It's the will of the town at this point, you know, those are the reasons that this project is happening. Yeah, the estimates, you know, it's coming in higher than the estimates, but at this point, the number is the number. This is what the cost of the project is. Now it's voted for twice, they felt it was worth doing. Is it worth it at the current price? And if not, then what does that mean? I guess more so from the town's perspective, what does that mean to the schools? We have to do something with that treatment plan one way or another. Yeah. So, you know, and I would say, so Mike, you know, where do we get, so we're gonna go before the FinCom and present this. I know it's all coming fast, I don't know, you know, if will they vote, you know, whether they'll be able to vote tonight that quickly about whether they're supporting this or how it's all gonna go from here.
What are they gonna support?
Yeah.
What is your suggestion gonna be on how you're gonna fund the rest of the project?
So,
Well, I think that's really up to the town. We've laid out what the suggestions are, and the opportunities are, but regardless of what you do, it still hits the tax rate. You know, there's no two ways of talking, whether it comes out of this pocket or that pocket, whether it's the APN or whether it's indirect costs, it's still the town. So the question then becomes, you know, is there enough interest in doing this, knowing full well that it's not just about today, this is about a section of roadway where it's difficult construction. And Mike, you know this more than anybody, that we've got a stretch of pipe on Fillmore Road and on Taunton Street. We don't have any connections because Wheaton College is already in. So we don't have anybody along this route to connect. So for a cost per
The route is
house
now.
basis, this is a really expensive project. Probably the most expensive one you'll ever see. You have a pump station, you've got a large stretch of pipe where there are no connections, no assessments can be made. So in reality, there's a lot of pipe that needs to be done for the connections that are here. But 2 or 3 or 4 of them are pretty important connections. 2 schools at least, maybe the middle school and the housing authority are pretty important, and they all have their issues. So I'm not sure it's really appropriate for us to come up with.
We don't wanna try to dictate, we have options, all of which, I mean, we've mentioned before, and we've looked at, you know, some of the APN. I guess if we could increase that and maybe adjust the percentages of the indirect costs and how they're figured, because I think, is that based on what we spend? So this will be a huge expenditure, and if that drives up the indirect costs quite a bit, that would really adversely impact us, and if we could adjust that ratio, maybe we could shave them.
Yeah, this won't come in play in that because this would be like outside your budget.
So this is a separate project.
So
Okay.
capital doesn't figure into that at all? But it does figure in when you deal with the costs from the MFN, right?
Yes.
So their capital costs figure in, but the town's capital
That
costs do
charge
not?
is on the budget, yeah, the MFN charge.
Right. Total. Well, there's capital, O&M, whatever it is, it's all in there.
So you haven't figured anything in here, so, well, if the APN goes up to 40,000 next year,
In year 1.
we're still short the 42,300.
Correct. And again,
Which is something, but we're hoping that if it's not insurmountable, we'll come up with it somehow. I don't know where it comes from yet.
and I don't want to discount the possibility of DHCD coming up.
Right.
And there is that.
I mean, if they
And that-
came up with some money, and I know you don't wanna go above the 15,000, but for every $1,000, that's $106,000 there.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was some combination of maybe going to 16,000 for another 106,000, and DHCD came up with the 437,
Mm-hmm.
almost 438, and
You could pretty much have it.
The 82,300 that we have left, you said there was principal forgiveness on the SRF, does that knock it down at all?
That would knock the 1.3 million down a little
Yeah,
bit.
This is an annual cost.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But-
You got that.
Just
Yeah,
break that
so-
down into the annual
So say
amount that's forgiven.
Right, so now it's 1.146.
So
So
it's not gonna affect you that much.
Well, every little bit helps, that's about 15% of the, or not quite 15, maybe 12, 13% of the dollar amount that's still out there.
And when the company, the low bidder bid their project price, did it include a contingency in there?
His bid did not.
No. So
We've
we're putting, the
included that
1.5
in.
has the contingency in it, the additional 1.5 can be, right, at 5%.
That's, it's
The SRF
in
requires
our
you to have
total,
that, too.
it's in our total $5.7 million is what they're saying.
But it's not in the 4.2.
So is there any chance that you're not gonna use the 1.5 million?
There's a chance we wouldn't use all of it, definitely need most
Yeah,
of it,
you gotta have
definitely
it
need
there.
most of it.
I mean, they
Yeah.
knew what they were bidding as, is reflected by the significant increase
So-
in price. So they've seen the borings, they know it's gonna be some deepish, hardish sewer. But you're right, it may come in even a little under budget or on budget would be perfect.
And you're right, it's not often that we get bids that are this close.
In that strata or that number, what
4
was it?
million.
On the 4 millions, to be only 300,000 apart shows that they were all looking to do the job, and they were very well educated on what it was.
It's the price. What it tells us is that's the number.
We've
They all
found a
saw
number.
the same job, they all saw the same job. And as unfortunate as it is that it's more than we've been talking about, we kinda gotta get past that and just, have that discussion about is it now unaffordable? Is it no longer worth it? It's been worth it up until now, people wanted to see it happen, but do they still feel that way at this price?
Did you spec it as a network project?
We did, yeah, so
So-
that's based on that market.
So that's part of the,
But
That's
it.
built into their
That's in
price.
there.
so
That's in their
are
price.
we gonna have any problems with doing this at night as far as
Timeframe?
work and the people around it and everything like that? It's gonna be an issue.
I'm sure there'll be issues, but, yeah,
Daytime
whether we
is-
do it during the day or night,
I
there'll
know,
be
you're right.
issues
It's gonna
out
be,
here.
it's an
Yeah,
issue,
there'll be
traffic
issues.
wise and stuff, it's
Yeah.
true.
There'll be less traffic issues doing
Yeah.
it at night, and they'll be in and out of there faster. If they're working days, it's gonna take them maybe twice as long, and that's not an exaggeration, because they can only work, 4 hours in the middle of the day is the only time they can work, whereas at night, they can come in at, 7 o'clock at night and work a full 8 to 9 hours before they have to shut down and be off the road before the morning commute. So, there's just not a big enough window during the day.
Yeah, and delaying for a little bit probably isn't an option. This project needs to be awarded when, by the end of this fiscal year?
For the SRF
For the
loan,
SRF
yeah.
loan.
And June, right?
Well, right. So our current schedule has us, we've already opened bids, we're in a 30-day period where we're evaluating bids and need to determine, the contractor's bid is good for 30 business days, working days. And so we need to make a decision before then. And we need to have the monies in place in order to be able to award and then go from there. The intent would be to start construction in June. We're equipped to do that, do the work on Wheaton right away, get off campus during, July into mid-August, and then come out onto the state highway from there. We gotta build the project from the bottom up. There's a lot of other details about the project that require certain construction. We wanna build the gravity sewer up such that the high school and Yale School can tie in, and then we're gonna use that existing corridor with the abandoned water main and where that current force main is to save on the construction by being in that existing corridor. But in order to take that section of pipe out that's no longer needed, the schools need to be connected to the sewer in the other direction.
So we know we've got at least a 5-foot corridor, maybe 6 foot deep, that we don't have anything getting our way. Other than the pipe that feeds
It,
out.
it just plays with the, order of construction. The scope and sequence of work is kind of tighter than it usually is. There's not a lot of flexibility on how they can build this job.
What do you think I don't know, Mike, think ahead, FinCom, what do you think, what would they be thinking about this? What's their thought process? Pretty much what you said, maybe there's a way to do this so that, it's a little bit of pain to everybody, right, pain? To the users along the way, the APN or the taxes, and maybe if we're fortunate enough, maybe something out of DHCD. But that probably won't be guaranteed by,
We
in
need
fact, I
about
would
2
say
days.
It's not gonna be
Voting
guaranteed
on
by
2
Wednesday.
days.
right away. Yeah, exactly, you're probably not gonna see anything. I did he did tell me he'd call me back either tomorrow or Wednesday or something. That something may say, we can't do that soon.
Let's to approve it. Then
But the question then becomes, is this vote contingent upon, sometimes people have made contingent votes. Personally, I would not recommend making a contingent vote on getting some monies from the state, more monies. I think that's very dangerous.
Right. We would have to, just have a proposal in front of the town meeting which addressed exactly what we need. And if the state money came, then we would adjust accordingly down in an area. But which one that is, I don't know.
A little bit of everything, maybe. I mean, that's a decision the town can make. And if that happens, it's a lot easier to make that decision.
Right.
I mean, because if you did get the 437.9, and if you went up $2,000 on the betterments, that's $212,000. So $649,900. So that would only leave $670,500 times the 2% interest rate over 20 years, whatever that works up to.
It's about half that amount, and you'd have it covered.
Right, for 40,000.
How many folks, Mike, on the FinCom understand what the APN is all about?
Probably not, no one,
Okay.
probably never have talked about it.
Okay.
We can get them up. They're pretty number savvy people. I think we can get them up to speed. We're gonna have to.
Right. And I guess, Mike, from your standpoint, if, I don't know, my crystal ball's terrible, but should the FinCom opt not to support the article, does that mean it's dead on arrival, or the selectmen would want to pull it?
Well, you'd have to meet with the selectmen Wednesday before the town meeting and talk to them.
Okay. Wouldn't be the first time. Or last. Okay. So what about this PowerPoint? Do you think it's something that you guys need to do with that? You have other business to deal with tonight. I think one other town meeting article is on the table to fund the water improvements on East Main.
Do we know, is there a time that we're supposed to be on, or how is, FinCom must have quite a bit going on tonight with the town meeting.
They're actually pretty much set with everything, except they've got tonight these two articles,
Okay.
and an article for message boards, and the town hall senior center feasibility study. The construction of the town hall senior center. So,
At 7, or how do you want to handle it?
I can
You wanna
come,
get us?
if you guys got business to do, I'll come get you when,
Sounds good.
I'll
Yep.
when you're ready.
No,
Yes,
perfect.
Mike, are you all set on the other part of the water main thing?
Yeah.
So Frank, I think you're on the floor.
You're not on the floor yet.
Not yet, close.
You have the floor.
I know later on we'll probably talk about that Abrams rate study. Is a copy from Foxborough just showing that their rate increase is gonna go up, but they will not exceed by 8%. Just Rose figured that you guys might wanna see that number.
And along those lines, we're trying to set up a meeting with Mark and Matt Abrahams the week of the 20th, that's next week, to go over our capital stuff with them.
They're back from vacation now.
What's
They're
that?
back from vacation now.
Well, yeah, Mark, I think, flew back from Florida last week, so he's back in the Northeast.
It's close.
Yeah.
Time for the snow.
But yeah, that's a pretty important part of this, their work, obviously, and come up with options for rates.
Received a letter from Condyne for the Blue Star Business Park, which is proposed for Leonard Street.
Right.
There is a possibility it may not be constructed due to a denial from the Conservation Commission for two of their buildings, Building 5 and Building 7. They are in the process of appeal. I'm sure you're well aware.
Yes, very much aware of that.
Were those the two buildings that were way out back?
No, one of them was a big 250,000 square foot warehouse structure that they wanted to build, and then the other building, Building 7, was kind of in the back, I guess. But,
Okay.
I think 7's the furthest out.
yeah.
Yeah. So there was some, I guess, stipulations they didn't meet or.
Yeah, this,
So,
they went a little overboard, I think. That was our opinion, so
so
we can resolve it.
they may go through with the appeal, but they want to let us know that there's a possibility they may pull the entire project.
How's it gonna? They always said they were gonna.
It'd be foolish not to for already owning that
We
property.
got our 6 got approved, so.
Right.
You know.
I'm sure it's just jumping through a few hoops.
Conservation's a pain, yeah.
They are.
I wouldn't say that, I mean, conservation. Got the updated cost estimate from VHB for the 1.3 water project. The original cost estimate was shy of just a small amount. They overlooked a few things that was caught by our engineers. After conversations back and forth, the corrected estimate comes out to $620,000. They recommend asking for $700,000 for additional items that may or may not come up during construction.
It's gonna be another issue where the trend of engineering and construction is on its way up.
I would
And
have to
next year,
say
we're gonna have to mark it
yes.
up by 20% or whatever.
Yeah.
There is a
I
possibility.
think this, in the amount, in the rapid response, I think this was, I bet they just, well, not only the expensive construction costs, I think they missed a few.
Yes.
I mean, there's no way to be 2-month turnaround and,
What was the original number, Frank?
The original was
430?
430.
430.
and the next one was almost, now they're looking for 7, so.
In
Right.
2 months, yeah,
Yeah,
that seems
it's-
a lot
I
higher
mean,
than the typical trend, yeah,
the-
I would agree with that.
I, you know, a 10 or 15% increase
Yeah.
would be possible, but I think they must have just, either they didn't think about flowable fill, or there was something they missed.
Yeah.
What that was, I can only
Yeah,
guess.
on this here, you can see there were some items that were listed. This was a copy of the letter that was sent from Woodson and Sampson to them, and showed the discrepancies that they had. Some of it was in amount of curb stops or length of pipe. There was some inline valves that were missing from the original document that we had agreed upon. They've made their corrections. That's how they've come up with that amount.
And when is this project supposed to be bid? Is it gonna be bid in the fall to be built in the spring, or is it gonna be bid next year? Right.
As far as I know, that's been pushed off till next year. They keep changing the design every once in a while. I see a new set of plans that comes through. At first, I thought it was all water related.
Yeah.
And they did have some issues pulling, or granting, easements
Right.
on some of the properties there. So they've relocated some of our proposed hydrant locations to make the paperwork and everything a little easier on them. So there's been quite a few changes that have been happening for the length of the project.
So probably bid early next year, maybe during the winter, start in the spring.
I would assume so. I don't see any specific dates set yet.
Not that I wanna see the price go up,
But I do
because, you know,
So you want it to be right.
yeah, I guess I'd be, a little concerned about diesel prices.
Right
I'll
now.
make sure they have some kind of escalator in here for a year from now, not on current bids, that's all. Yeah, I
If we
don't,
need them, are we gonna use it?
yeah,
Next meeting?
yeah, and I don't mean to cut Frank off, but we probably should have a,
Finance committee does have that sheet, Frank, from VHB,
Okay.
so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
yeah, how do you, I mean, not that we have other business to deal with, but I'd like to know what you guys would like to do for that in FinCom.
Right.
As far as the West Main Street,
Yeah. It seems like the East Main water main thing is pretty much
is what
somewhat
it
cut
is.
and dry.
Right.
That's gonna be
Wanna ask
first,
it?
I assume if they're going in order,
Most likely.
doesn't matter, probably.
Right.
Whichever
I mean,
one we
again,
want to
it's
talk
an
about.
estimate. We have a hard number for the sewer,
Mhm.
you know, and that's the one that's pending right now.
Well, as the APN money increases each year, the first year it comes in, it would be 40, and then it would be 50, and then it would be 60.
Correct.
So if I could imagine a scenario where I would call it in my construction loan speak, a bridge loan. So if we could, am I correct in understanding it's a year before we start to pay, like, the funding for the project is included in the SRF money during construction?
Yeah, you know, during construction, there are no interest costs at all. It's zero interest with the SRF. So you start paying when the project typically is done, buttoned
So-
up and actually
So
operating. And that's-
so looking at a year from today,
Yep, yep.
Oh, a little bit more.
best case scenario, yeah,
Best case
June.
year.
So
June
it's
next year.
$10,000
A year-ish.
Right.
So that year is 40,000, so if we can count on that, and then the following year count on 50, that's what,
That's approved by the
The
town.
board is gonna be here, something like that.
I know.
what was that?
So we don't know if the board's gonna, that's their call? That's up to the board?
They control the APN.
Right,
Well, not the APN, they control everything over the
the
200,000.
delta, right, whatever that additional dollars are, and for this project being the quasi-state agency, the DHCD and the schools, this probably has a lot of reasons it could be diverted this way. And it is from a sewer source, if you will. The APN was literally the payments to Norton for the plant. So,
And that APN, just so people understand, without that APN, you probably would not be part of the MFN regional district to the
Right.
tune that you're at.
Right.
You wouldn't have been able to afford it.
so if we can count on those dollars, increasing
Over time.
and holding, that increasing rate, that gets us quite a ways there, and if,
It could take a little bit for everybody.
do we inch the
Betterments up a
the
little bit.
betterment to 16,000? Does that get us?
Still be, and again, this is just a numerical calculation to say, what if the 11,550 was increased by about 1% per year compounded
Mhm.
over time? And I think that actually comes up to about 15.5.
Right,
So 15.5 could probably be justified somewhat easily.
yeah,
But every dollar you add to the betterments, potentially increases the number of people that can come to town meeting and say, I'm being served in now I gotta pay for something that I really don't need today.
Yeah,
And that's how the sewers issue or
Right.
game goes. Not everybody needs the sewer at the same time.
right.
Doesn't work that way. But if you've got 5 years to tie in, to physically
And
make.
20,
2 years.
was it 20 years?
Years on 2%, yeah.
20 years to pay, and if we hold the interest rate at our SRF dollars at
2.5.
2.5%, just a little small interest rate, I mean,
Yeah. that's
that
definitely a
would
selling
be,
point.
that would be palatable to more people. I've heard many people ask if we could stretch out the betterments.
Beyond 20?
No, just to 20,
Okay.
you know, in the,
Yeah, the question is.
rather the
can I-
tie-in
can I
fee, when-
portion this?
where we are in certain scenarios because of whatever project driver,
Yep.
the large tie-in fee is prohibitive to a lot of people.
Yeah, and when you did the town center project, you couldn't really charge betterments for the folks along the way. There's about a dozen properties on the downhill side of the LG North School. And basically, you're gonna wait to, if and when they need to tie in, that's when they would pay their tie-in fee, which would be equivalent to what the betterment was.
Right.
But there were in fact no betterments charged for the town center. The last time betterments were charged was when?
No, they have to do it within 5 years, that's set up if they can't.
Yeah,
set up
the
that.
town actually had a bylaw at one time that they passed years ago when the first project was built around the reservoir. Because there was a lot of money being spent and the feeling was if we're gonna build sewers, people need to use them. And there was a bylaw, town meeting passed a long time ago, when that, maybe 25 to 30 years ago, that basically said 2 years. You have 2
Right.
years to tie in. And it was enforced, pretty much. But what started happening is that a lot of the sewers being done and built in town were done privately, so other people were getting served along the way, and felt that that 2-year requirement to tie in was onerous, and town meeting voted to extend it to 5 years. Which is a lot, it's a lot. In septic system age time, it's a long time.
Right. So where were we, how close are we with the, let's say 15.5, and then if we have the 40 and the 50 in the following year on the APN to our target of 82.3?
Yeah, you
5
get
years
pretty good,
less.
5 years down the road, you got coverage just
Every
with
year
the
it goes
APN.
by, it gets closer to the amount that we need, yeah. It's
Yeah,
some
so
next
how do
5
we
years
bridge
figure it
that?
out.
How can we pull a rabbit out of a hat for the little, that's what we
I
need.
wish I had
that's
my
what-
my
that's-
calculator here to say, okay, now how much, well, wait a second, we can do it that way.
Big sale?
No, I was gonna say, what does the present forgiveness, what does that change? We're really
Well, you
close to
said
that.
it.
Right, because that's what they're gonna wanna know,
Yeah.
the numbers,
Yeah, definitely.
the total numbers that we can go out Wednesday to the town meeting with.
13%. So, 82.3 is roughly 11,000. So it's roughly, what's exactly $11,000 difference? So now you're down to 71.3. Just ratioing everything. If we take the 176 off the 132. So it's just simple math. So if you're at 40,000 from the APN in year 2020, 50,000 in 2021, 60 in 2022, and 70 roughly in 2023, you're there, going forward.
Just 3
Okay.
years.
And then what you would probably do is hold that constant at that point,
Okay, at the 60,
right? Yeah, or, yeah, at 70, once it gets to 70,
okay.
and hold it steady. But in the meantime, you still have to make up, 30,000 the first year, 20,000, 10,000 the next year. in the grand scheme of things, dollars and cents, the monies we're talking about here, it's not a lot.
Is that a thing we could take out of, like a sewer, capital fund or one of our,
You don't have a capital fund
Okay.
set up in sewer, but that's something you could definitely talk about. You have a capital fund in water,
right,
you don't have one in sewer.
okay. I mean, for the 30,000, I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's, you know, it's not a huge obstacle.
Yeah, what's your budget for sewer for the year, a little over $1 million, something like that?
I do not have that with me right now.
I think it's close to $1 million. And the reason I think it's about $1 million. And most of that money is paid to MFN. Very little of the cost is actually for what is spent in town. Most of it is for the treatment plant.
Okay.
So in fiscal 20 synopsis.
So maybe we,
Yeah, you're around $870,000 total.
yeah, so maybe the first year, fiscal 2020, we asked for some help from the general fund for the 30,000. And then the following 2 years, we carry it from the sewer, give us time to set up our own
Yeah.
rainy day capital fund. We allow, that 2020 year to accrue our 20,000 in that year, and the next year we only need 10, and then by then the APN dollars kick up to 70 and we go. Steady at 70.
So we assume we only have nothing extra from DHCD?
That's
Well,
what we have to assume.
If,
going in.
if that happens, then we
That's
adjust,
the bonus.
then we adjust accordingly.
Right.
We could,
Okay.
we could
Still an ask for
offer,
it though, right?
we could offer the,
Adjust the APN number so
One
we
of the
don't
options.
deal with the indirects at all.
So, one thing that could happen is town meeting could put contingency.
Right.
They'll only approve it with this, which is dangerous.
That would be bad.
Now, if it gets approved with the number as it is, how would that number ever change? How
Well,
would you
the
ever-
directive
you
could be,
still-
the directive
you
of
could
town
still-
meeting said, we want you to do everything you
Yeah.
can to get it,
Right.
and to reduce this cost.
Right.
Because,
isn't it the or less? We need to raise and appropriate this or less.
they don't say or less, it's up to.
Up to, okay, I'm sorry, all right. So it's,
Yeah,
It's
it's work
that.
that way, we're fine.
And
Try
I
to put
mean-
money from DHCD, if we don't get it, it's
Oh,
still approved.
absolutely, we can still take it, it's just.
Yeah, and then the language in the article basically talks about accepting any state, federal, local, private monies that are available for
course.
the project, so that's
All right.
there. And don't forget, you also will, I don't know how, what kind of, the connection fee you would assess, well, it would be a benefit. I'm just thinking of, the new,
Cumberland Farms,
Yeah, that would be a benefit.
another betterment.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Well, I think we have a
And that
path.
further reduces,
Well, the
that
thing
has
is,
more revenue than what we're projecting right now, right? The current revenue is based on what's there now. The Cumberland
we
Farms.
assess one unit, so they're probably 2 or 3 units. So
That's right, they're not a big one.
Right.
Not a big one. It's more about the tax base than the benefit.
Correct.
The betterment would be huge, okay.
Yeah, so if it's a $4 million project, $15 per thousand tax rate, that's $60,000 a year on in taxes for one building along the way. And I don't know that they can build without sewer. Has anybody looked at that on that site? Do we know?
I'm not sure. I'm-
But that's also a dangerous one because somebody said, well, I don't want to build a Cumberland farm, so, let's vote it down because,
Yeah.
without sewer they can't build.
I'm not
They have to
sure.
be able to put sewer there.
I
It's something
think-
there. They're putting gas tanks there, aren't they?
That was a bank,
Right, but they're gonna be putting,
gas
Gas
tanks,
tanks
I
there, right?
think, I
Well,
don't know.
with
I
the
don't
my-
see the
ASTs.
plan.
I don't remember now.
I don't know.
But they're putting underground storage tanks.
No, they're putting underground.
Groundwater.
They're putting underground
I'm
storage
sure
tanks.
it's septic in there.
Yeah, I gotta think there was a septic there before, but I'm not gonna,
A bank doesn't really,
well, there's some,
yeah, there is some, yeah.
but we hope.
So it's almost immaterial.
It's a better draw, saying that this sewer there, so whatever wants to come out.
Yeah.
But I think with that, with
Ready
that
to go?
path, we're pretty darn close. So if, I don't know where the 30,000 in year 2020 would come from the general budget. Are they're gonna want us to come up with a spot to pick that from?
That's really up to, I think, the selectmen to figure out if it's applied here or there, or just a tax rate. Or
So we'll ask,
Because in reality, you know, it's a pretty unique situation here where the general fund really is not contributing to any of the sewers. And
Right.
back when the sewers were done, people would cut it, 50% of the cost was paid by taxes.
yeah,
So what we're doing now is trying to do it without hitting the general fund for anything.
right.
So it's a,
But for this case, it's only a small portion of a huge project. And
Right.
this huge project has multiple benefits for the town in general.
okay, sorry to
No?
interrupt you, Frank.
No, that's fine.
I'm not sure if you saw a copy of this, it was addressed to you. This is the gentleman that is the owner of Tweed Manufacturing, 138 Darrell Street. Over the winter, the building froze, and we had the January thaw. We were chasing around, knowing that we had a large leak in the system based on our SCADA, looking at our tanks dropping. I actually found a leak there, the water was coming through the walls. Notified fire, they came down, we shut off the supply to the building. Fire department shut off all the PIVs around the large complex there, and was able to isolate and shut it down. This gentleman feels he has adjusted his bill accordingly, because if the water is not being supplied to his property, in case there was a fire, he doesn't feel he should pay the full rate to the building. Now, in the past, if the water is supplied to the building regardless of usage, there's always been a full charge for that, just for it being available. It's unfortunately the homeowners or the building owner's responsibility to keep the pipes from freezing and keep his system intact. So what he's done is he's figured out the charge where he felt was according. I think there is a printout in there, and made the adjustment with a copy of the check that he sent in.
So this much water went through the meter?
Yes.
We didn't let his pipes freeze, he
No,
did.
unfortunately, it was, I believe there was a malfunction in the heat or
Yeah, so
whatever
does he have water service? Yeah.
he is not sewered, no.
Does he have water service now?
There is no water to the building still. It has remained off since the day we shut it off.
Okay. Well, the water went through the meter. Folks, I think our usual stance is, when he pays the rest of his invoice, he let his buildings freeze, we didn't.
Unfortunately.
When he pays the rest of his water, we could turn him on, whenever that
Yeah,
may be.
there's some significant repairs that need to be done to the
Sure,
property.
right.
Is that property for sale?
He was the owner of the property. I think he recently purchased it when this first happened. I don't know if it is back up for sale.
And then is there a minimum quarterly?
There is a minimum charge, yes.
So, with everybody's agreement, I would recommend a letter to be sent in the words something about we need the difference in the shortfall in the check between the amount of the invoice and your recent payment. In addition to that, expect to see, and I'd like you guys to, you and Rose, to figure out the monthly or the quarterly minimum that will continue while there is service at the curb stop for that property. And we strongly recommend he repair his sprinkler systems too, because that's the problem, right? The
Correct.
sprinkler system.
The sprinkler is
So we
the
strongly recommend, along with, I'm sure, our fire department, that we make all necessary repairs to put the fire suppression system back in order as soon as possible.
That's that big wood structure right near the water, right?
That is correct.
The water.
Yep.
it's all sprinkled?
Yes.
Was.
What was, yes.
They don't have a fire watch on, they have one in Mansfield.
I do not believe they do.
It's, pretty cool, they also have explode.
Well, we can just deal with the water and
Yep.
I think
That's it.
that's the limit of our stuff. So if that's all we have once Pokey finishes the bills over here, we can stroll
I can
next.
do it after.
No, you can do it now and then we'll be done, right?
Is there nothing else on the agenda?
We'll come back and adjourn. Or we can come up with a couple of things.
Let's come back with having less bills that I have to sign every week. Can we give
Frank, the,
Sorry.
given its price, the decision was, I would assume the decision was made to borrow that money. So, again, I just asked because go to town meeting, it's 2/3 vote, that's all. Just like West Main Street sewer, borrowing question, 2/3 vote. Not that it's on the agenda, but I just got a quick report from Jim Garrick, who's on the treatment plant. And so everything's still going according to oil, even with schedule, I shouldn't say this, no good term. Even though the rain, things are going well, schedule's still being met. So everything's a go for, looks like August, for everything up and running. Getting clean water to the system, still have to wait to do the testing. After that,
Oh, yeah.
and then we got the wells issues as well, as far as the work that he's done, so we can actually get the water on the ground.
So
It's
based
true.
on, based on experience with these other towns and salt treatment plants, if you turn around and say August, how many months before you have clean water delivered to people? On average.
I'm not personally familiar with that, but I was told 2 or 3 months.
3 months?
You gotta do a good round of flushing. You know, once you get that good flushing, it starts getting the old stuff out, and now we're putting good stuff in, as
Right.
opposed to taking old stuff out. You know, still getting old stuff in,
Right.
and still flushing the old stuff, it's still, you know,
Right.
almost counterproductive.
But once that flushing program's done, normally it's good for a while, then you just get back in your regular, still you get some annual flushing program.
Yeah, flushing will be
Yes.
That's still twice a
crucial,
year.
Right.
critical to
Retain it. Good to know.
And not to be focus so much on money, but it does make the world go round. But the goal is that Mark Abrams to be done with his work such that the rate increase could be voted, if you will, town meeting in October.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Because at the same time that clean water's coming in, you can actually start billing people
Get
and
some
they're
good
paying
roll.
for it,
Yeah.
and the rates.
Scott's right.
Well, I think we should
Closing it up?
adjourn our supplemental meeting and continue it over at the FinCom meeting down the hall.
So moved.
Sounds good.
Thank you.